This is the RB22. And it's not just fast. It's frightening. Because for the first time ever, Red Bull built the whole thing in-house. Chassis, aero, and now their own engine. And the moment it hit the track in Barcelona, everything changed. A new floor, a radical rear end, and a turbo response so violent it caught Verstappen off guard. This is not the same Red Bull. And this car does not behave like last year's champion. Inside sources say the RB22 is brutal to drive. One engineer called it a monster with no leash. And still, it was one of the fastest cars on the circuit. But here's what no one expected. There's already a failure in the system. If they don't fix it by Bahrain, the whole concept could collapse. And if they do fix it, they'll be unstoppable. This is the most dangerous car of the season. And you're about to find out why. Subscribe now. Because what's happening inside Red Bull should terrify every other team. The RB22 didn't arrive with fireworks. There was no dramatic reveal. No flashy PR campaign. Just a cold test day in Barcelona. And a car that looked different. Visibly shorter. Sharper undercut. A slimmer midsection than any other car on the grid. At first glance, it looked like evolution. But this isn't evolution. It's war strategy. Because this car isn't just Red Bull's next step. It's their first step into total independence. This is their first car designed entirely around their own engine. No more Honda compromises. No more adapting someone else's layout. And that freedom? Red Bull used it. The floor is brand new. Longer tunnels. Sharper edge treatments. More aggressive than anything they ran in 2023. Cooling? Redesigned from the ground up. They've restructured how airflow moves through the side pods, compressing the bodywork tighter than ever, freeing up new aerodynamic paths around the rear suspension. But here's where it gets scary. Most teams reveal their real car late. Red Bull revealed it early. This was not a placeholder. This was the actual RB22. At full spec. Running full systems. And on paper. It worked. Over 3 days, Verstappen and Perez completed more than 400 laps. No major reliability issues. No red flags. Just clean, clinical testing. But numbers don't tell the whole story. Because inside that clean testing record, there's a detail no one's talking about. The power unit was loud. Visibly aggressive. And something strange happened during hybrid deployment. Not once, but multiple times. Engineers were seen checking turbo lag behavior, adjusting throttle response mid-run. And Verstappen had questions. That's what triggered the internal review. Because while the RB22 was fast, it's not yet smooth. And that makes it unpredictable. Speed never tells the whole story. Because in Barcelona, Red Bull didn't just bring a new car. They brought a new engine. The first full build from Red Bull powertrains. Designed in-house. Tested behind closed doors. Built to destroy the era of Mercedes dominance. And at first, it looked like a masterpiece. Thinner packaging. Higher electrical efficiency. Shorter cooling cycles under high load. But then, something happened. At medium-speed corners, Verstappen began reporting inconsistencies. The throttle response felt delayed. The energy deployment didn't match expectations. And something wasn't syncing between the turbo and the hybrid. That's when engineers began looking deeper. They ran silent mode. They isolated systems. And what they found was a lag. A micro delay. Not just mechanical. Software-based. A timing conflict between turbo boost and energy deployment. Enough to destabilize the car at exit. Enough to shake confidence in tight sequences. Enough to make even Max Verstappen hold back. And that is not something you ever want to hear. Because Max doesn't lift. Max doesn't complain. But this time, he did. He told engineers, "This thing kicks when it shouldn't." And that comment sent everyone into red alert. Because if the turbo kicks late, the rear tires lose grip. If deployment comes too soon, traction breaks down. And in a season where every team is managing tighter weight limits and more sensitive tires, those small losses? They compound. They snowball. And they turn into something fatal over race distance. But here's where it gets serious. This isn't just a mechanical issue. It's a software problem. And software is slow to fix under pressure. Because every change needs to be tested, simulated, validated through powertrain integration. And right now, the Bahrain test is just days away. Red Bull's engineering team is working around the clock. New maps are being written. Deployment curves reprogrammed. But the clock is ticking. If they solve it, the RB22 becomes untouchable. If they don't, it becomes unpredictable. And no team wins championships with a car they don't trust. Max Verstappen isn't used to doubt. He's used to dominance. 3 titles. Hundreds of laps in clean air. A car that obeyed his every command. But in Barcelona, something changed. For the first time in years, he looked uncomfortable. Not visibly. Not publicly. But if you watched closely, if you listened to the tone on the radio, you could hear it. Questions. Pauses. Hesitation. Not about pace. About behavior. The RB22 was fast. But it was raw. Twitchy. Uneven. And for Verstappen, who thrives on precision, that's a red flag. Sources close to the garage said he requested 3 separate setup changes in one afternoon. Not because of balance, but because of feel. He didn't trust the rear end under power. Didn't like the mid-corner rotation. And above all, didn't believe the car was telling him the truth. And for a driver like Max, trust is everything. But while Verstappen was searching for control, Sergio Perez was silent. And that silence says more than words ever could. Perez completed nearly as many laps as Max. No complaints. No changes. No visible frustration. But also, no standout performance. Some insiders believe Red Bull isn't sharing full data between the 2 cars. That Perez is running an older deployment map. Or a detuned power mode. Others think it's something deeper. That Red Bull is already shifting full attention. Full development. Onto Verstappen's side of the garage. And here's where it gets dangerous. Because this is year 1 of Red Bull as a full works team. They're responsible for everything now. No outside engine partner. No fallback plan. If something breaks, they own it. And Verstappen knows it. That's why, after Barcelona, he stayed in the garage longer than planned. Debriefed late into the night. Insisted on simulator runs within 48 hours of returning. Because Max doesn't want another repeat of 2021. He doesn't want to fight the team and the car at the same time. But right now, he might have to. And the question everyone's asking, quietly, behind closed doors, is simple. If this tension keeps growing, if the RB22 doesn't deliver from race 1, does Max start looking somewhere else? Every year, one team walks into preseason testing ahead of the curve. This year, Red Bull assumed it would be them. But after 5 days in Barcelona, that assumption started to crack. Because while the RB22 ran hard laps, while Verstappen pushed through discomfort, while software teams scrambled to rewrite deployment logic, another car was lapping with surgical consistency. No fuss. No red flags. No failures. Just lap after lap after lap. Ferrari. And here's the part that shocked everyone inside Red Bull. They expected Ferrari to be stable, conservative, maybe even behind. But they weren't. They were fast. And not just in single-lap pace. Ferrari ran long stints with high fuel loads, and still held competitive deltas over Red Bull. And that was not supposed to happen. Not this early. Not with a car that wasn't even running full spec. Because insiders now confirm the Ferrari that ran in Barcelona was a launch version. It didn't have the updated floor. It didn't use the new Bahrain cooling package. It hadn't even activated the full energy control map. And yet, it beat expectations on every metric. That's when Red Bull engineers started taking photos, studying airflow, tracking tire wear patterns, watching corner speeds on replay, frame by frame. And what they saw, forced to change. Because Red Bull had planned their first major upgrade for Race 3. But after Barcelona, they pushed it forward. Now, they want it for Bahrain. And that kind of shift? That only happens when you're spooked. Because it's not just about lap times. It's about confidence. Ferrari left Barcelona believing they're in the fight. Red Bull left, hoping they still are. And Bahrain? That's where it all becomes real. Because the track is harsh, windy, unforgiving. And if Red Bull still hasn't fixed the lag, if the balance still feels unstable, if Verstappen can't extract full pace on low degradation runs, then the real threat isn't Mercedes. It isn't Aston Martin. It isn't even the FIA. It's Ferrari. And Red Bull might be chasing them now. Bahrain isn't just a test. It's a gauntlet. High track temps, abrupt elevation changes, heavy braking zones followed by long, full throttle exits. And above all, wind. Lots of it. Unstable crosswinds that hit at random, especially through turns 9, 10, and 12. And if there's one thing the RB22 doesn't like right now, it's instability under load. In Barcelona, the car was manageable. Closed circuit, cooler air, stable grip. But Bahrain? It's everything this car fears. Turbo lag becomes more pronounced. Rear tire degradation accelerates. Cooling efficiency is tested to the limit. And guess what? That's the moment when software problems get exposed. Because Bahrain isn't just a race. It's a stress test. Red Bull's energy deployment system, still under review after Barcelona, has never run under Bahrain's brutal race conditions. And if it fails to sync, Max Verstappen could lose power mid-corner, lose traction on exit, lose time every single lap. And he knows it. That's why, in the final team meeting before leaving Spain, he made it clear. Fix the delivery, or we won't win this race. Strong words, but accurate. Because internally, Red Bull's own simulations show a warning. If the hybrid turbo sync issue persists, they could lose up to 0.4 per lap in Bahrain race trim. And in Formula 1, that's catastrophic. It's not just a bad weekend. It's championship damage. And it's not the only problem. Sources say the RB22's new rear suspension layout, while offering incredible aerodynamic gains, is proving difficult to control over curbs, In Barcelona, that was manageable. In Bahrain, it's a liability. Exit traction on uneven surfaces is a key performance differentiator. And right now, Ferrari looks stronger there. So what happens if Red Bull shows up in Bahrain? And they're not the fastest? What happens if they can't use their usual tire offset strategies? What happens if Max Verstappen gets overtaken on track? Not by strategy, but by raw pace? We've seen that version of Red Bull before. And when it shows up, things start to fall apart.